I sat in the dim light of my kitchen, the one I'd scrubbed clean for 40 years, staring at the envelope in my trembling hands. The paper felt crisp, official, like something from another world invading my quiet one. Eviction notice, it read in bold letters, and my heart stuttered as if it might stop right there on the spot. How could this be? This was my home, the place where I'd raised my boy, buried my husband, and planned to breathe my last. But the name on the deed now? It wasn't mine. It was hers, my daughter-in-law's. The woman I'd trusted was like my own flesh and blood. The clock on the wall ticked softly, each second a reminder of how alone I felt in that moment. I'd fallen just weeks before, a silly slip on the icy steps outside, and now here I was, bandaged and bruised, facing the unthinkable. I could still smell the faint lavender from the soap she'd brought me in the hospital, her voice so sweet as she promised, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of everything." Everything. The word echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. I crumpled the paper, tears blurring the ink, wondering how betrayal could cut so deep from someone I'd let into my heart. It wasn't always like this. No, life had been kinder once, wrapped in the simple rhythms of a widow's routine. I remember the days before the suspicion crept in, when trust was as natural as the morning coffee I brewed strong and black, just like my late husband George liked it. We'd built this house together in the suburbs of a small town in Ohio. Nothing fancy. A 2-story with a wraparound porch where we'd sit watching fireflies on summer nights. George passed 10 years ago from a heart attack, quick and without warning, leaving me with our son, Michael, who was 28 then and just starting his life. Michael was my anchor after that. Tall like his father with the same gentle smile that could light up a room. He worked as a mechanic, hands always stained with grease, but he made time for me. Every Sunday he'd come over for dinner. Pot roast with carrots. The kind that simmered all afternoon, filling the house with that warm, earthy scent. We'd talk about his week, laugh over old stories, and I'd feel the emptiness George left a little less sharp. Then came Sarah. She entered our lives like a fresh breeze, or so I thought. Michael met her at a community picnic, and before long they were inseparable. She was pretty, with soft brown hair and eyes that seemed kind, always quick with a hug or a compliment. "You're like the mother I never had," she'd say, and I'd beam, feeling needed again. They married after 2 years, a small ceremony in our backyard under the oak tree George planted. I gave her my mother's pearl necklace as a wedding gift, watching her fingers trace the beads with what I believed was genuine gratitude. In those early days, Sarah fit right in. She'd help me in the garden, her laughter mixing with the rustle of leaves as we pulled weeds. "This soil smells like home," she'd say, dirt under her nails. We'd bake pies together, apples with cinnamon that lingered in the air for hours, and she'd listen to my stories about George, nodding thoughtfully, her hand on mine. Michael adored her, and I did too. She promised to be there for me, especially after I updated my will. It was her idea, really, during one of our quiet evenings. "Mom, you should make sure everything's in order," she said softly, pouring tea that steamed gently in the lamplight. "We want to take care of you, always." I was touched. As a widow with no other family close by, my savings in this house were all I had. I'd worked as a school secretary for 30 years, saving every penny, and the will originally left most to Michael. But Sarah convinced me to include her directly. So there's no confusion if something happens. Her voice was so reassuring, steady like the hum of the refrigerator in the background. I trusted her, why wouldn't I? She was family now. So I met with the lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, an old friend from church, and made the changes. Everything to Michael and Sarah with the understanding they'd look after me in my old age. It felt right, secure. Life settled into a comfortable pattern. In the mornings, I'd wake to the birds chirping outside my window, make my oatmeal with a dash of honey, and tend to my knitting, scarves for the grandkids I hoped would come someday. Sarah visited often, bringing groceries or just sitting with me, her presence a balm. "You're not alone," she'd whisper, squeezing my hand, and I'd believe it. Michael was busier with work, but Sarah bridged that gap. We'd watch old movies together, the flicker of the screen casting shadows on the walls, popcorn popping in the microwave with that buttery aroma. It was peaceful, the kind of normal that lulls you into forgetting how fragile trust can be. But then, the little things started. Subtle at first, like a crack in the foundation you don't notice until the rain comes. The first clue came on a Tuesday in late October. The kind of crisp day when the leaves crunch underfoot and the air smells like wood smoke from someone's chimney. I'd been feeling a little unsteady. Nothing serious, just the ache in my knees that comes with 75 winters. So Sarah had driven me to the clinic for a checkup. She waited in the car, scrolling on her phone, humming along to the radio. When the nurse handed me a new prescription, I tucked it into my purse and shuffled back out, the gravel crunching beneath my orthopedic shoes. Sarah smiled as I climbed in. "All good?" "Just blood pressure meds," I said, patting her knee. "You're a saint for bringing me." She squeezed my hand. "Family looks after family, Mom." That evening, I needed the insurance card from my file drawer, the one in the little study off the kitchen where I kept every receipt. Every birthday card, every scrap of paper that proved I'd lived a life. The drawer stuck the way it always did, metal scraping metal, and when I finally yanked it open, the folders weren't in their usual neat stack. The will folder, bright blue, labeled in my careful handwriting, was gone. I stood there a long moment, the room quiet except for the tick of the mantel clock George wound every Sunday. My pulse fluttered like a trapped moth. I told myself Sarah must have borrowed it for something innocent, maybe to photocopy for taxes or to show Michael. I closed the drawer, poured a cup of chamomile, and let the steam warm my face. No need to fuss. She'd bring it back, but days turned into a week and the folder never reappeared. I started noticing other small absences. My good fountain pen missing from the desk, the spare key to the safe deposit box no longer on its hook by the back door. Sarah still came by, still brought lemon loaf from the bakery, still kissed my cheek with that same lavender scent clinging to her scarf. Yet when I asked, casual as I could, "Did you happen to take the blue folder, dear?" her eyes flicked to the window for half a heartbeat. "Oh, that old thing?" She laughed, light and breezy. "I think Michael grabbed it for some paperwork at the shop. You know how he loses track." I nodded, smiled, and swallowed the unease. Michael had never touched my files in his life. Then came the fall. It was early December, the steps glazed with ice I hadn't noticed in the dark. I'd gone out to fetch the mail, slippers sliding, and the next thing I knew the sky spun above me, pain exploding in my hip. Neighbors found me, Mrs. Delgado from next door, her dog barking like mad, and the ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and kind voices. 3 days in the hospital, surgery to pin the hip, morphine dreams where George came and sat by my bed, smelling of motor oil and the peppermint gum he loved. Sarah was there every visiting hour. She brought my robe, the soft pink one with the tiny roses, and brushed my hair with gentle strokes. "You're going to be fine," she whispered, tears shining. "We'll get you home soon." Michael popped in once, exhausted from double shifts, kissing my forehead before rushing off. Sarah stayed. She handled the discharge papers, the physical therapy schedule, the pill organizer. "I've got it all under control, Mom. Just rest." They released me to a rehabilitation center for 2 weeks. Insurance wouldn't cover more. The room smelled of bleach and overcooked peas, but Sarah visited daily, bringing magazines and the little tin of shortbread I liked. One afternoon, she sat on the plastic chair, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone. I watched her reflection in the dark window, the way her thumb paused, the slight purse of her lips. "Is everything all right at home?" I asked. She looked up, smiled instantly. "Perfect. Michael's holding down the fort. Don't you worry about anything." But I did worry. The eviction notice arrived the day I was scheduled to go home. A nurse handed me the certified envelope with apologies, thinking it was medical. I waited until lights out, then tore it open under the thin blanket with my flashlight pen. The words swam, premises sold. Vacate within 30 days. New owner Sarah J. Caldwell. My mouth went dry. Caldwell, Michael's last name. But the signature at the bottom was hers, looping and confident. Nothing like the careful print I remembered from birthday cards. I must have made a sound because the night aide poked her head in. "You okay, Mrs. Whitcomb?" "Fine, dear," I croaked. "Just a bad dream." That night I didn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling tiles, counting the dots until they blurred. My house, my porch swing, the dent in the hallway where Michael crashed his tricycle, the lilac bush George planted the year we married, gone. And the savings? I'd seen the balance drop in the hospital when Sarah showed me the bank app on her phone, so you wouldn't stress. Transactions I didn't recognize. Round numbers transferred to an account labeled S. Caldwell Trust. The betrayal settled in my chest like a stone. Not rage, not yet. Just a cold, hollow certainty. I'd given her everything, my trust, my future, the promise of care, and my frailty. And she'd taken it while I lay broken. The next morning, I asked to use the center's computer in the common room. My fingers shook on the mouse, but I logged into the county recorder's website. Thank God for the library classes I'd taken last year. There it was, a new deed recorded 3 days after my fall. My signature at the bottom, witnessed by a notary I'd never met. The loops on the E and Evelyn were wrong, too round, too perfect. I printed the page, hands trembling so badly the paper rattled. Sarah arrived at noon with my suitcase. Ready to go home? She sang All Sunshine. I looked at her, really looked. The lavender scarf, the careful smile, the way her eyes didn't quite meet mine. Actually, I said, voice steady for the first time in weeks, I think I'll stay a bit longer. Doctor's orders. Her smile faltered, just a flicker. But your room's all set, I insist. I folded my hands over the printed deed hidden in my lap. You go on. I'll call when I'm ready. She left with a puzzled frown, and I waited until her car pulled away before I dialed Mr. Hargrove, the lawyer. His secretary put me through right away. Evelyn? His voice was warm, familiar. Heard about the fall. How can I help? I need to see my will, I said. The real one. And I need it today. Mr. Hargrove's office smelled of old paper and lemon polish, the same as it had for 30 years. He met me at the door himself, gray hair thinner now, glasses perched on the end of his nose, and helped me into the leather chair that creaked under even my slight weight. The ride from the rehab center had been in a medical transport van, the driver kind enough to wait outside. My hip throbbed with every shift, but the pain felt distant, muffled by the roar in my ears. I brought everything you asked, he said, sliding a thick folder across the desk. The blue one. My blue one. Sarah dropped this off last week, said you wanted changes while you were incapacitated. I held off signing anything new until I spoke with you directly. I opened it with fingers that felt like ice. There was my will, the original, dated 2 years ago, leaving the house and savings to Michael with a trust provision for my care. Then, clipped beneath, a second document, a codicil revoking the trust, transferring full ownership to Sarah upon my permanent institutionalization. My signature at the bottom, witnessed by a notary named Carla Ruiz. The ink was black, too uniform, the pressure too even. I'd used blue ink for 40 years. That's not my hand, I whispered. Hargrove's face tightened. I thought it looked off. The notary's stamp is real, but the address is a UPS store in Columbus. I called. They've never heard of Carla Ruiz. He laid another page beside it. The forged deed from the county site. Same looping E, same flawless slant. My stomach turned. There's more, he said quietly, opening his laptop. I pulled your bank records. Power of attorney Sarah filed the day after your surgery. She's been moving funds. $43,000 in the last 10 days. The numbers blurred. $43,000. My retirement, the CD I'd cashed when the roof needed replacing, the emergency fund labeled for Michael's children someday. Gone. I pressed a hand to my mouth, tasting salt. She promised to care for me. Hargrove's eyes softened. People promise a lot of things, Evelyn. We're going to fix this. He made calls while I sat numb, the radiator clanking in the corner like a heartbeat. First to the bank, freeze the accounts. Then to Adult Protective Services. My fall and sudden institutionalization raised red flags. Finally to Judge Marwood, who'd known George since high school and owed Hargrove a favor from a land dispute 20 years back. By the time the van took me back to the center, temporary guardianship was in place and a court date set for the following Tuesday. Emergency hearing, closed family session. The next 4 days crawled. I stayed in rehab, claiming therapy setbacks. Sarah texted daily, "Miss you, Mom. The house feels empty. When are you coming home?" I answered in short bursts, "Soon, dear." Doctor's orders, each word a lie that tasted like ash. At night, I lay awake, replaying her voice in the hospital. I've got it all under control. The lavender, the brushed hair, the shortbread tin. All props, Michael called once, voice thick with exhaustion. "Mom, Sarah says you're not ready. Is everything okay?" I gripped the phone. "I need to see you alone," he hesitated. "Work's crazy." "Tuesday," I said. Courtroom. 10 a.m. be there. Tuesday dawned gray and sleeting. The courthouse steps were slick. Hargrove held my arm as we climbed. Inside, the hallway smelled of wet wool and floor wax. Sarah was already in the conference room, dressed in a navy suit, hair sleek. She stood when she saw me, smile faltering. "Mom, you didn't have to come all this way. Sit down, Sarah." My voice didn't shake. Not anymore. Michael arrived minutes later, grease still under his nails, confusion creasing his brow. "What's going on?" Judge Marwood entered, robes rustling, and wasted no time. Hargrove laid out the documents. Original will, forged codicil, phony deed, bank transfers. The notary's affidavit. Turns out Carla Ruiz was Sarah's college roommate, now living in Florida, who'd stamped the form for $50 and a promise of a cruise. Sarah's face went white as the sleet outside. "I did it for us," she blurted when the judge asked for an explanation. "Michael's shop is failing. We needed equity. Mom was going to a home anyway." Michael flinched as if slapped. "A home? She's my mother." "She fell, Michael." "She can't live alone." Sarah's voice cracked, mascara smudging. "I was protecting our future." The room went still. I looked at my son, really looked. The exhaustion in his eyes wasn't just from work. "It was a shame, you knew?" I asked softly. He shook his head, slow. "She said we were borrowing, temporary. I signed what she told me." His voice broke. "I'm sorry, Mom." Judge Marwood's gavel fell like a period at the end of a sentence. Deed reversed, accounts frozen, power of attorney revoked. Sarah faced charges: forgery, elder abuse, theft. The prosecutor wanted jail time. Hargrove pushed for restitution and probation. Michael sat silent, head in his hands. As we filed out, Sarah grabbed my sleeve. "I didn't mean," I pulled away. The lavender scent made me nauseous now. "You meant every stroke of that pen." Michael walked me to the van, rain mixed with sleet stinging our faces. "I didn't see it," he whispered. "I should have seen." "You will," I said. "From now on, you will." Back at the center that night, I sat by the window watching headlights streak through the dark. My hip ached, but the stone in my chest had shifted, lighter somehow. Justice wasn't sweet. It was necessary, like pruning a diseased branch before it killed the tree. The weeks after court moved like thick syrup, slow, sticky, impossible to rush. I stayed in the rehab center longer than insurance wanted, paying out of pocket with the emergency cash I'd hidden in a flower tin years ago. Hargrove arranged a freeze on Sarah's access to everything, but the house still stood empty, windows dark, the lilac bush drooping under late winter ice. I couldn't bear to go back yet. Not while her perfume still clung to the curtains. Michael came every afternoon once therapy ended. He'd sit in the vinyl chair, elbows on knees, turning his wedding ring round and round. The first visit he brought nothing. No excuses, no flowers. Just red-rimmed eyes and the smell of the shop on his jacket. "I filed for divorce," he said, voice rough. "Papers served yesterday." I nodded. The words didn't surprise me, but they still landed heavy. "She's staying with her sister in Dayton," he added. "Won't contest the charges if I don't push for jail." "That's between you and the prosecutor," I said. "My part's done." He looked up. "Is it?" I thought of the forged E, the way she'd brushed my hair while draining my accounts. "For now." We started small repairs. He drove me to the house on Saturdays, heater blasting in his truck, country station low. The first time we crossed the threshold together, the silence pressed in. Dust on the piano, mail piled like snowdrifts. I stood in the kitchen, hand on the counter where I'd rolled 1,000 pie crusts, and felt the walls breathe around me. Mine again. Legally, at least. Michael swept floors while I sat with tea, directing from the old oak chair George refinished the year Michael was born. We didn't talk much. Words felt clumsy beside the scrape of the broom and the creak of floorboards. When he found Sarah's lavender scarf draped over the banister, he balled it up without a word and dropped it in the trash. Neighbors trickled in once word spread. Mrs. Delgado brought tamales wrapped in foil, steam fogging her glasses. "We saw the for sale sign go up, then vanish," she said, hugging me tight. "Figured something rotten." Mr. Patel from the corner store arrived with groceries and a fierce scowl. "That girl came in here spending like a queen." I knew. They didn't linger for gossip. They lingered for me. Someone to cook with. Someone to sit with. Someone to remind me the world still held decent hearts. Spring crept in slowly. Crocuses pushed through the flower beds I hadn't tended. Michael replaced the porch step that had betrayed me, sanding the wood until it gleamed. One Sunday he brought a flat of pansies, purple, like the ones George always planted. We knelt together, dirt under my nails for the first time in months, the sun warm on our backs. "I should have listened when you asked about the folder," he said, pressing a seedling into the soil. "You were tired," I answered. "Love makes us stupid sometimes," he gave a short, pained laugh. I was more than stupid. The restitution hearing came in April. Sarah stood before the judge in a plain gray dress, hair pulled back severe. "No lavender." She read a statement. Apology scripted by her lawyer, voice flat. The prosecutor laid out the numbers. $68,000 drained, $12,000 in legal fees I'd incurred, the cost of rehab extensions. Judge Marwood ordered full repayment on a 5-year plan, garnished wages, plus 200 hours community service at the senior center. No jail. Michael didn't look at her once. Afterward, in the hallway, she tried to approach. Michael stepped between us like a shield. "Don't," he said. "One word, final." She walked away, heels clicking on linoleum. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time since the fall. The sheets smelled of sun, and the lavender sachets I'd replaced with new ones. Plain, honest scent. I left the window cracked. Night air carried the faint sweetness of lilac beginning to bud. My hip still ached when I turned, but the ache felt earned now. Part of the landscape of living. Friends filled the house again. Mrs. Delgado taught me to make tortillas from scratch. Her hands guiding mine over the griddle, the sizzle and pop of mesa, a new kind of music. Mr. Patel installed a video doorbell. No charge. Mrs. W., consider it neighbor tax, and showed me how to check it on my phone. Michael built a ramp over the front steps, sanded smooth, painted the same soft gray as the porch swing. One evening in May, the book club ladies arrived with wine and lasagna. We ate on the porch, fireflies blinking like old friends. Someone asked about Sarah. I answered honestly but briefly. She's paying her debt. That chapter's closed. They nodded, didn't press. Conversation drifted to grandbabies and garden pests and the church picnic. Normal talk. Healing talk. Michael moved into the spare room upstairs. "Just till I'm on my feet," he said, but we both knew it might be longer. He cooked breakfast on Sundays now. Eggs over easy, toast just shy of burnt, coffee strong enough to stand a spoon. We watched the news together, argued good-naturedly over politics, laughed at the dog next door who still barked at his own shadow. The house filled with new noises, his boots by the door, the clatter of tools when he fixed the leaky faucet, the low hum of the radio while he sanded the banister smooth again. I started volunteering at the senior center myself. Ironic. Maybe, but the irony tasted like justice. I taught knitting on Tuesdays, fingers steadier than they'd been in years. The ladies brought cookies. I brought stories. Not the betrayal. Those stayed folded away like the forged papers now locked in Hargrove's safe. I told them about George's terrible jokes, Michael's first steps, the way lilacs smell after rain. Small truths that stitched the torn places. One afternoon, a new resident, frail, frightened, clutching a purse like a life raft, asked if the family ever visited. I thought of Sarah's lavender scarf in the trash, Michael's quiet presence upstairs, Mrs. Delgado's tamales still warm in my fridge. "Family isn't always the people you're born to," I said, covering her hand with mine. "Sometimes it's the ones who show up when the papers say you're alone." She smiled, tentative, and I felt the last shard of ice in my chest melt clean away. Summer settled over the house like a quilt stitched from ordinary days. The lilac bush exploded in purple, its scent drifting through open windows each morning, mingling with the coffee Michael brewed before heading to the shop. He'd sold half the equipment to pay off debts Sarah left behind, but the place still turned a modest profit. He came home with grease under his nails and a lighter step, whistling off-key while he grilled chicken on the porch. I sat in the swing, creaking gently, shelling peas into a colander balanced on my lap. The rhythm of it, snap, drop, snap, felt like prayer. One Thursday in July, Mrs. Delgado knocked with a basket of tomatoes still warm from her vines. "Too many," she said, wiping sweat with the hem of her apron. "You take. Make sauce." We spent the afternoon in my kitchen, the radio playing oldies, steam fogging the windows. She chopped onions with quick, practiced flicks. I stirred the pot, the garlic popping in olive oil, the air thick with basil from the pot on the sill. Michael wandered in, stole a taste from the spoon, and earned a playful swat. "Out, thief," Mrs. Delgado scolded, but her eyes danced. He grinned, kissed the top of my head, and disappeared upstairs to shower. The easy affection between us had grown back slow, like grass after drought. No big speeches, just shared meals and the quiet certainty that he wasn't going anywhere. The senior center asked me to lead a memoir writing group. I hesitated. My own story still felt raw in places, but the director, a kind-eyed woman named Ruth, insisted. "Your voice matters, Evelyn. You've lived." So I started. 8 folding chairs in a circle, notebooks passed around like communion. The first prompt was simple. Describe a smell that means home. I wrote about George's motor oil and peppermint gum. Mrs. Kowalski wrote about her mother's bread. Mr. Lee wrote about his wife's jasmine tea. We read aloud, voices trembling at first, then steady. One woman cried when she realized she still had the recipe card in her purse. I passed tissues and felt the room knit itself together, thread by invisible thread. Sarah's restitution checks began arriving, a $200 a month, clipped from her wages at a call center in Dayton. Michael brought the envelopes unopened, laid them on the counter like evidence. I endorsed them to the senior center's emergency fund. Let it help someone else, I told him. He nodded, no argument. The money felt cleaner that way. August brought a heat wave. The porch swing stuck in the humidity. Michael oiled the chains until it swayed smooth again. We ate watermelon at the picnic table, juice running down our wrists, seeds flicked into the grass for the birds. Fireflies rose at dusk, slow golden pulses against the dark. I thought of the night George proposed right there on that swing, knees knocking, ring box damp with nerves. I told Michael the story. He listened, chin propped on his fist, the way he used to when he was small. "Have you ever thought about dating again?" he asked suddenly. I laughed, surprised. "At my age?" "Mrs. Delgado's cousin Luis asks about you every Sunday after Mass." I swatted him with a dish towel. "Mind your business." But the idea lingered, warm and strange, like sunlight on closed eyelids. September painted the oak tree gold. Michael rebuilt the garden boxes George had let rot, filled them with lettuce and herbs. We harvested the first batch on a Saturday, dirt under our nails, the earth cool and damp. Mrs. Delgado came with empanadas. Mr. Patel brought mango lassi in thermos cups. We ate on the porch, plates balanced on knees, laughter rising with the crickets. Someone started a story about the time the church roof collapsed during bingo. Another topped it with the mayor's toupee flying off in a parade. I looked around the circle, faces weathered, kind, familiar now, and felt the word family stretch to fit them all. One evening in October, the air crisp with the coming frost, Michael carried the old photo albums from the attic. We spread them across the dining table, dust motes dancing in the lamplight. There was George in his army uniform, me in a polka dot dress the day Michael was born, Sarah in her wedding gown, smiling bright as flashbulbs. Michael paused at that one, thumb hovering. "Burn it?" he asked. I shook my head. "Leave it." She was part of the story, just not the ending. We left the album open to a picture of the 3 of us under the oak tree, arms linked, sun in our eyes. Michael poured cocoa. Steam curled between us. Outside, the first leaves skittered across the porch like children playing tag. "I used to think blood was the strongest glue," I said quietly. "Turns out it's showing up. Day after day, even when it's hard." He nodded, eyes on the photo. "I'm here, Mom, every day. I know." Winter circled back, gentler this time. Snow dusted the ramp Michael built. The pansies long gone, but the boxes mulched and waiting. The senior center held a holiday craft fair. My knit scarves sold out in an hour. Ruth pressed the money into my hand. "For the emergency fund," she winked. I bought groceries for Mrs. Kowalski, whose husband had passed away in November, left them on her step with a note, from one widow to another. Christmas Eve, the house glowed. Michael strung lights along the porch. Mrs. Delgado brought pozole. Mr. Patel arrived with a box of gulab jamun sticky with syrup. We sang carols off-key, voices fogging the windows. Michael hung a new ornament on the tree, a tiny house with a ramp. "For the next chapter," he said. I hugged him until my hip protested. Later, when the others had gone and the fire crackled low, I sat in George's old chair, blanket over my knees. The room smelled of pine and cinnamon. I thought of the eviction notice, the forged E, the cold hospital nights. Then I thought of the garden, the laughter, the circle of chairs at the center. The losses hadn't vanished, but they'd been folded into something larger. Resilience, maybe, or grace. Michael came in from locking up, snowflakes melting in his hair. You okay? I smiled. Better than okay. He kissed my forehead, the way George used to, and went upstairs. The house settled around me, familiar creaks and sighs. I closed my eyes and felt the years settle too, not heavy, but earned. Like rings in the oak tree outside. Each one a story of surviving, of choosing who to let in, of learning that home isn't walls or blood. It's the people who refuse to let you fall alone. I never imagined a stranger's tamale or a neighbor's porch light could stitch a heart back together. But they did. Blood promised me safety. Chosen souls delivered it. Sarah's lavender still haunts the trash bin, yet the scent of Mrs. Delgado's garlic and Michael's morning coffee fills every room now. I lost a daughter-in-law, gained a village, and learned that loyalty isn't inherited. It's proven, one quiet visit at a time. If someone you trusted forged your future, would you fight, forgive, or walk away? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story stirred something in you, hit subscribe, share it with someone who needs courage. We're all just one fall away from discovering who truly catches us.